friends. Welcome to LeggLife Podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherri.
Sherri Beth, what episode is this?
151.
So what we're talking about today is something that we have toyed with talking about on an episode for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And recently we asked on Instagram for ideas from you, the LeggLife community. And one of you said, hey, would you guys consider talking about this? And we thought, well,
kind of doing like a deep dive.
Maybe that's the spur that we needed to kind of move us forward.
Yeah.
And so, Sherri, what are we talking about today?
EDS, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, what I have.
Okay, so if you've watched our YouTube channel, you may have heard us refer to EDS a bunch. You may have heard us talk a little bit about it. But we've never done like a deep dive into what is it, what's Sherri's journey been, how does it impact her life, our life, how do we, even things like travel. And I believe, I'm not totally positive, but I think the person who messaged us, I think his wife has EDS. And he was just kind of asking some questions about just the practicality of what normal life looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so you and I talked about this and said, you know what? This is the week. This is the time.
Yeah.
So, Sherri, there's a lot of things that we're going to deep dive into. But I thought that before we got into some of your story, what your experience is, we would just start even with an overview of what the heck EDS even is.
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot of people. I mean, it is considered a rare disease, and so there's a lot of people who've never even heard of it, and they don't know what it is or what it entails.
So, Ehlers-Danlos, they're like lots of different ways to, if you even type into Google how to pronounce it,
you get like 4 different ways.
And so lots of different ways out there.
Yeah.
EDS is what we're going to call it just kind of for the rest of this. Basically what it is it's a group of connective tissue disorders that basically affect the body's ability to produce collagen properly.
Right.
And it leads to lots of different things. And we'll talk about some of the things here in a minute. There's not just one type of EDS. It's not like if you have EDS that you just kind of fall into one bucket.
Right.
There's actually 13 different types of EDS, which I thought was really interesting.
Yep.
But there's one big one, which is basically hypermobile EDS.
It's the most common type.
Like 80 to 90% of cases fall into the HEDS bucket.
Which I do.
Which you do.
Yeah.
With a caveat.
With a caveat.
That we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different things that come with some of the different types of EDS, but there are some pretty common symptoms kind of across most types.
Yeah.
Those are things like, and it's funny because as you go online and learn about EDS, Sherri Beth just checks all the boxes. It's like, if you're looking to set a high score, good job, love, you've done it.
I did it. I got 9 out of 9 on the Baton score.
We'll talk about what that is in a minute. So some of the common symptoms are like joint hypermobility.
Yeah.
So very, very flexible. Joints move like well beyond what they're supposed to. There are times that I see Sherri bend into positions and I'm like, if I do that, call an ambulance.
You should not be able to move like that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But that can lead to like sprains, dislocations, which, all of the time happens for you.
Yep.
In fact, little funny story, when Sherri and I are watching football, if a football player dislocates their shoulder or something, Sherri's just like, what's the big deal?
Get up, walk it off, pop it back in. You're fine.
I've done that so many times. I don't understand.
I did it 6 times today.
Yeah.
So, I dislocated my knee twice.
Why are they in pain? This is just normal. And then chronic pain and fatigue.
Yeah.
Which is huge. Obviously muscle pain, joint pain, and it's just it is constant.
Yeah.
You said one thing one day that I think really helped me understand, that the pain scale is difficult for you. Because for me, I'm normally not in pain. And so it's I can figure out where I'm at on the pain scale because my baseline is not in pain.
Right.
Your baseline is always in pain.
My baseline is a 3 or 4 on the pain scale. So I'm so every single time I go to my EDS doctor, they always ask where my pain is at today. And I'm always just God, it's such a hard question to answer because even throughout the day, I have pain spikes. I have pain, I have times where I'm at, a 6 or 7 or an 8. And then, it kind of goes back down to a 3 or 4. But I would say I live my life at a 3.
which is amazing to me.
On a pain scale.
Gosh. Another one that's super common is like skin fragility.
Yep.
So Sherri's skin is, the best way I can describe it is like velvety. When I touch your skin, like just the feel of it is so different.
My doctor, I saw my primary care doctor. I just saw her this week, and for like my annual checkup kind of thing, and she was feeling around. And she was like, "Your skin is just so silky soft."
Yeah, it really is, and not just silky soft, but also very stretchy.
Yeah,
very almost like elastic. And it's just like you can instantly know just touching your skin that something is different.
Yeah.
Other things like poor wound healing, you have that.
Well, because my skin is so soft, it tears very easily.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then other things, GI issues, acid reflux, all of that kind of stuff. And just those are kind of like the common ones. Again, there's lots more with all of the different kind of causes of EDS. Yeah. So what causes it? Well, it's genetic.
Yep.
It's inherited by either like one of your parents or both of your parents.
Yeah.
Now, growing up, let's start talking a little bit. You know what? No, let's not talk about this a little bit because this next question will kind of lead into it.
Okay.
As far as like, so how do you get diagnosed with EDS? That's actually kind of tough.
Yeah.
Because with HEDS, which is the most common type, as we said earlier, there's not like a single test to confirm it. So the doctors use like these combination of like different like sort of assessments.
Yeah.
And you talked about one of them earlier.
The Baton scale.
Okay, so what is that?
I had to Google.
Okay.
We asked the Google.
Okay.
Or ChatGPT, I guess. It says a scale that measures joint hypermobility based on how far joints can stretch. A high score suggests hypermobility.
Okay, but what is it? Like, tell me what she did.
It's a series of, she had me bend my body in different ways and kind of see like how far my shoulders can stretch and how far my back can stretch. Like, can I stand with my feet flat on the floor and put my palms flat on the floor, like directly in front of my feet? Yes, I can. It's a whole series of 5 different poses that she put me in to see how far I can stretch. And I got a 9 out of 9.
Yeah, so good job. Set the high score. 9 out of 9. And so when you went through it, one of the things we said earlier, she has HEDS, but like with an asterisk.
Yeah. So my official diagnosis is hypermobile EDS. And then she just hand wrote, suspect another type.
Yep.
I don't know what other type she suspects. But there is, again, there's 13 types of EDS. And so hypermobile is kind of the most common. But even on that, it's a sliding scale.
Yep.
Of even, you can be hypermobile and be less or more hypermobile than somebody else who's also hypermobile. So
everybody with HEDS isn't like having the exact same experience.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you officially were diagnosed. Oh, actually, first, before we move into that, I'm sorry. I want to jump ahead because I'm so kind of excited to get to your story because it's just so intriguing to me. But one of the things that your doctor said, and the doctor who diagnosed you actually has EDS.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
And comforting.
Because you haven't had a lot of doctors, for a long time, who even heard about it, let alone knew what that lived experience was like. Right.
So growing up, I first heard about EDS when I was 16. And I was without getting into full details, I was in a really bad car accident and ended up having surgery, being in the hospital for 8 days. And the surgeon who worked on me, after my surgery, asked my mom if I had ever been diagnosed with EDS. And she was like, I am 99% sure that she's got it. And so we kind of started the journey of what that is. We'd never heard of it before. And so, yeah, I was officially actually diagnosed when I was 39. But at 16 is kind of when we learned what it was, and we're pretty sure that's what I had.
So at 39 when you got your diagnosis. Doctor who diagnosed you is kind of like the go-to person in Anchorage, probably Alaska, for EDS diagnosis.
Yes.
And what she told you was really interesting as far as like kind of where you rank.
Yeah. So she did this bait and score thing for me, and she kind of asked me a bunch of different questions, and she was like, I have diagnosed probably 500 people, and you fall in the top 10. She's like, not 10%, top 10 of like hypermobile. And I was like, oh,
great,
cool. Really set the high score. So yay me. That's what
yay you. So
yeah,
you talked a little bit about your diagnosis.
Yeah.
When you first noticed it. Can I ask you some questions about like your experience now?
Yeah.
So 16 years old is the first time that this term EDS kind of comes into your life.
Yes.
Looking back on it, before you were 16, especially now knowing the symptoms of EDS, things like, being super flexible, or like these frequent sprains or bruises, or like just kind of joints giving out.
Yep.
Looking back on it, was that a part of your experience even before you were 16?
Yes. So my skin has always torn very easily. I bruise very easily. And I was a typical kid. We lived in Indiana. And I climbed trees. I fell off my bike. I did all the things. But I feel like I was just a walking bruise for most of my childhood. And like my brother would fall off a bike. He'd fall out of the tree that we'd climbed, and be fine. He might get like a small bruise or something, but I would like bruise. And, it was just like, what in the world? Like, good grief. And, again, we didn't know why. But now, looking back and be like, oh, okay, well, that all makes sense now. And, I had sprained my wrist playing volleyball in gym class. I broke my finger playing basketball in gym class. I fell down the stairs. Here's the thing. I'm also clumsy.
Good combination.
Just in general, right. But I do actually wonder, like, looking back, like, how many times, falling down the stairs or falling out of the tree or falling off my bike, was it because my joints had actually dislocated?
Yeah, totally.
And I just didn't know that was happening.
You just kind of like, you chalked it up to clumsy,
right.
But it actually may have been tied to this.
Right. And so, walking down the stairs in our house, I fell, and I might have dislocated something, like something popped out and it made me fall. It might have just been because I'm clumsy in general. But I broke my collarbone. So like, I'd had these injuries kind of before, before this car accident that actually brought all of this stuff to light. So, and in the car accident, the reason that I had to have surgery was because I actually ended up with a hole in my bowel system.
Yeah.
Back and under. None of the x-rays caught it. It was a very bad car accident. And so, they checked me head to toe, and me and my brother and our exchange student Joanna, who was in the car with me, and they checked everything for all of us, and this did not show up on any x-rays. And so it was like the next day that I was still just in so much pain, and I couldn't keep water down. Like nothing. My body was just rejecting everything. And so my mom was like, there is something else wrong. We are going back in. And so that's when they figured out what was going on with that. And so that was caused from the car accident. I don't know how, but the jarring from hitting this other vehicle, who was actually at fault. It was not me. Mm-hmm. They pulled out in front of me. Something with that impact caused this hole in my bowel system, and so it was draining directly into my abdomen. And so it's, that kind of stuff, because it's not just my skin. It's every single organ in my body that is affected by EDS. All of my innards.
So growing up, like the EDS wasn't on your radar till this happens at 16.
Right.
And I know you and I have talked a lot about this, because even when you moved to Alaska, like trying to find a doctor who knew was a challenge for us.
Yeah. So, we had, our family doctor growing up, and I don't remember talking to him about it, but we must have, because he was our family doctor. But yeah, so in college, I found a doctor near my college that had EDS as well. And so I started seeing him. And he was able to, talk me through a lot of stuff. He's actually the one, and again, like, I think we talked about this on our Why We Don't Have Kids video, but he was the one who basically warned me against having kids. He said, with my particular version of EDS, that having children would be very dangerous for me and the child. And that was 25 years ago, so I'm sure things have changed. 30, I don't know, 25 years ago. And so, medical stuff has changed since then, and so it might not be as dangerous now. But yeah, he was, he warned me against it. So I was 19 at the time.
So growing up, EDS is something that, did you know any other person, like any other friends or people like in your life, apart from like these couple random doctors who had EDS?
No. And I don't think that Dr. Alland had, she's the surgeon. I don't think that she had EDS. I think she had just worked with it enough that she knew what it was and knew how to recognize it. And again, it affects everything in me. And so when she was, having to remove all of my innards to get to this little spot that she had to fix, I think that's where she was just like, man, it's everything. So, I think that's why it kind of waved that flag for her.
So now EDS has, you and I talk about this a lot, that even early in our marriage, I feel like we didn't hear about it, didn't know anybody who had it.
No.
And even in the last handful of years, all of a sudden, like, I feel like we see it everywhere. Like, even like Halsey has it. Rebecca Yarros has it.
Yep.
Violet in Fourth Wing
Violet Sorrengail. Yeah. Because Rebecca Yarros has it, and so she wrote a character. What
has that been like for you, growing up with something that nobody knew, but now all of a sudden it's kind of becoming more, I don't want to say common, but it was certainly more common than it was.
Yeah.
Just in culture.
It's a little bit, it's weird. I like it because it is becoming more known, and so it's something that is easier to find doctors who know what it is, how to deal with it. My primary care knows about EDS, knows how to deal with it. And so it's, in that sense, it's so much easier because, I remember I had a doctor for a little bit up here, and the first time I saw her, I was telling her I have EDS, and she was like, oh, I don't know what that is. And so the next time I saw her, she had done all this research, which I really appreciated about her. And she was just like, well, you're my patient. I'm going to learn everything I can about it so that I know how to treat you, which I really appreciated. But then she moved out of state, so that sucked. But it, it wasn't uncommon for me to have to explain my own diagnosis to the doctor.
Interesting.
Because doctors even just didn't know what it was or what to do with it. And so it's nice that it's becoming a little more known. I do think that EDS is one of those things that was and continues to be misdiagnosed on both sides of the coin. I think that there's probably people that have not been diagnosed with it that do have it. They've been diagnosed with something else. I think that there's people that have been diagnosed with it that actually don't have it. They probably have something else, because it is similar to other things.
Well, so talk about, I'm so glad you said that, because I always thought this was interesting, and you tell people this a lot. Talk about the zebra.
The zebra. So the zebra is kind of the mascot for EDS. And the thought behind the zebra is that so many doctors are, it looks like a horse, it sounds like a horse, it's coming up behind you. People think it's a horse with a clip clop. And so, you get diagnosed with God knows what. And it's not a horse.
Yeah.
It's a zebra. Because it looks like a horse, it sounds like a horse, but it's actually not a horse. And so that's kind of the thought behind the zebra as the mascot.
It presents as one thing, but it's actually something different.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Until you dig a little bit deeper and you're like, oh, nope, this one has stripes. It's different.
So there are lots of like invisible illnesses, right? And this is something that you've talked about a lot with me. We've had a lot of discussions about, I could look at you and be like, wait, what's wrong with Sherri? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with Sherri, because it's not as visible.
Right.
What's that like for you?
In some ways, I don't mind it. Because for me, I've never wanted it to rule my life.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of things that I should have, braces and other things that would prevent me from popping out all the time, that I just don't want. Because I don't want it to rule my life. I don't want my life. I know that it does affect my life and there's nothing I can do about that, but I can control how much it affects my life and how much it prevents me from doing. So, I could, for all intents and purposes, stop working.
Yeah, right.
I could be in a wheelchair. I can, there's all kinds of things that I could do, because I have EDS that I don't, because
Sure.
I don't want it to control my life. And so I kind of just live with the pain and live with, my joints popping out randomly. But I just don't want it to control my life. And so I think that, having an invisible illness in that respect is actually helpful, because I don't have to let it rule my life.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because it is invisible. I know that I have it. People that are close to me know that I have it, but looking at me, you wouldn't know. And I like it that way.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk. You touched a little bit about how it impacts your life. Mm-hmm. So let's spend some time talking about that, because you've been very open about having EDS.
Yeah. And
lots of our friends know that, and even viewers. And so you've received a lot of messages, text messages, phone calls, emails from people that are like, my daughter was just diagnosed, or my doctor thinks my daughter might have EDS, or,
yeah.
help, basically. Like,
yeah.
What in the world is this new world we're stepping into? Help us understand it.
Yeah.
And so you're very open about your experience having EDS.
Yeah.
How does EDS day to day, and we'll get in a little bit later about like planning travel and just like kind of tips to managing EDS.
Yeah.
How does EDS kind of affect you day to day?
Day to day, again, I live my life kind of at a 3, I think, on the pain scale. And so there's never a time that I'm not in pain. If you sit near me for any amount of time, you'll notice that I'm constantly moving.
Yep.
And that's because I am constantly trying to find a position that's comfortable, and it's never going to happen. My joints are just uncomfortable. And so I'm constantly shifting. And, there's also times where, I will be sitting a certain way, and then all of a sudden I can feel my knee or my hip actually starting to dislocate. Mm-hmm. And so I will quickly change positions to try to prevent that from happening. Because I have learned that if I just try to hold still, it actually will just continue to pop out all by itself.
And so you, I think that one of the things that you do really well is your body and the way it reacts to things.
Yes.
And you just pay a lot of attention to your body. And you probably have to, whereas like me, I'm just like a big dumb oaf, like floating through life.
You're a very cute oaf.
Thank you. But like, I don't have to think about that, where I feel like it always has to be something on your mind.
Always. Because again, even just sitting here, like I'm moving my shoulders,
yeah.
I'm stretching my back, I'm, shifting my hips constantly, walking upstairs. I can't just walk up the stairs. I have to kind of, I know that specifically my left knee is fairly weak. And, so I walk at a little bit of an angle going upstairs. Because I know that if I just walk up the stairs like normal, my knee will pop out.
Yep.
And God, it hurts. It hurts every time. And so, I mean, and that's the thing is like, I see these football players like, dislocate something and, I am kind of joking. I'm like, just get up, walk it off. Cause that's what I do. But it does hurt. And I think that if you're not used to it, again, I live my life in pain. And so I think that I probably have a higher pain tolerance, than a lot of people. And so it never doesn't hurt to pop out a joint.
Sure.
But I also know that, again, I don't want it to rule my life. So I will pop it back in and keep moving, even though I'm in more pain now. Like, my pain just went from a 3 to an 8. And, I'm just walking around in a lot of pain now. But, that it just, I don't want it to control my life.
So there's no cure for EDS. There's no like...
It's degenerative. It's just going to keep getting worse.
That's okay. That's what I was just going to say, is that this is something that it's not only going to get better, it's not going to stay the same. It is with time only going to get worse.
Yeah. So our friend Sarah, who's a doctor, Auburn's mom, she was explaining, and I, hadn't heard it this way. So if you have chronic pain, you're probably familiar with spoons. And being a spoonie, everybody's allotted a certain amount of spoons, and, people with chronic pain have fewer spoons and they go through them quicker. And so, when you're out of spoons, you're out of spoons, and like, you're done.
Yep.
With your day, with your movement, with whatever. And yes. But again, I think that for me, that kind of mindset is like, oh, well, I'm out of spoons and it's noon, so I guess I'm just done for the day. I don't like that. So I'm just like, I will find more spoons. I'm gonna raid another drawer and I'm gonna find some more. And so the way that Sarah explained it is steps. And, she said, every person in life is allotted X amount of steps, walking steps. And she said, people with EDS, with other, chronic illnesses, have maybe fewer steps than people who don't have a chronic illness. And, she said there will come a day when you run out of steps. And so you can conserve them now and have them for a little bit longer. Or you can just try to use them all now and then, be done sooner. But she said, you're going to run out of steps one day.
We haven't, just so you guys know, we had a very brief talk before we sat down to record this about this. I feel like it's something that like we talk about a lot in our daily life.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about what you just said here, and I hope it's okay because we haven't talked about this publicly. So you, and I appreciate this about you, you have, one of Sherri's best qualities is her stubbornness. And going back to it, not wanting to let this be a hindrance to your life. In some ways, like you have maybe not accepted some of the things that are out there that would make life easier for you.
Yeah.
Because you just so don't want it to be like your core identity.
Right.
And so the one I want to talk about is like even the accessible pass.
Yeah.
The accessible placard. And for years, your doctors have been encouraging you, hey, Sherri, you have a pretty significant version of this.
This is available to you, right?
This is available to you. You should get this. And you were like, nope, 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 nope.
I don't want it.
Because why?
Because I feel like it's a slippery slope. I don't know. I feel like if I give in to one thing that might make my life a little bit easier, then I will give in to the next and the next and the next and the next, and then I'm wheelchair bound and I never leave the house, and I don't know, like I just I don't want that for myself at 43 years old. And so yeah, but I did break down last year and I actually got one.
Okay. And are you glad you did?
I am. So I rarely use it.
Yep.
I have it mostly for winter. We do live in Alaska. It gets very icy.
And when your joints already pop out.
And when my joints already pop out, I don't need any help with that.
Yeah.
And so, walking on ice is extremely difficult because, again, you have to walk differently on ice than you do on like dry ground. And I don't know, it makes me more wary about popping out. So, I will use my accessible placard to park closer so I have less ice to walk on. I have it year round. The few times I've used it in like the summer is on a high pain day when, I just have days where I'm just in a lot more pain. Yeah. And there are days that I just, I don't want to have to park at the back in the parking lot and walk all the way in and then walk around the whole store for my shopping and then walk all the way back out to the back of the parking lot. I don't want to. I'm already in pain.
Well, and I think that's where Sarah's illustration about the steps is so helpful.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that is a tool that helps you save steps for other parts of life where it's most necessary.
Yes.
And I think that that's such a good way to look at it. That this isn't like, this is something that allows, and our friend Janice has actually really helped, I think, both of us understand this a lot, that it makes your experience in life, not just today, but hopefully extending it for the future, that much better and that much easier.
Yes. And so, yeah, it has. And so I really, like I said, I rarely use it. We just keep it in my car, but I don't use it everywhere we go. I don't, if I'm having a low pain day, then I will walk from the back of the parking lot and I'm fine. But there are just days that I just don't have it in me.
And there are other things, because EDS is this wide spectrum. There are people with different levels of EDS who are in wheelchairs, who use braces, different pain management or physical therapy techniques.
Yes, and that's the thing. It's like it's your own. You get to choose.
Yep.
And I think that and there are people with more severe forms of EDS. There are people with lower pain tolerance that are living in pain all the time, and so it's just it's got to be your own choice. I think. I mean, you do you. But for me personally, I just don't want to.
But are there things like, because it's degenerative, as you think about getting older, I will say part of and you've been like freaking crushing it with like weight loss stuff. Part of the weight loss really is EDS is degenerative.
Yeah.
Joints are only going to hurt more going forward, and weight plays a role in that.
Weight plays a role in that, and so if I can weigh less, then it's less pressure on my joints.
Yeah, I think you like.
And so that's been really kind of the driving force. Like, obviously I would like to be healthy, but even more than that, I want to preserve my joints as long as I can.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk still a little bit more about just, first of all, when it comes to braces, other things that you're not currently using, things that as this changes, getting older, you're not a hard no on any of it. Like, you'll kind of reconsider it, or where you at with that?
Yeah, I'm not a hard no on any of it. I just, as I get older, and the last probably 3 years, I've noticed my left knee specifically pops out a lot, multiple times a day.
Yep.
And Adam's always like, "Whoop, sniper fire!"
Sniper fire. Sherri's down.
And I'm just walking, and all of a sudden, like I'm down. Or it looks like I tripped over something, but no, my knee just dislocated.
Yep.
Subluxed actually. And so there are braces that will keep it in place and prevent that from happening so much. But it's certainly not, there's nothing that's off the table, especially as I get older, because if there's something that will allow me to keep moving, to keep traveling, to keep experiencing life, I'm going to do what I need to keep doing that.
It's one of the things that I think having your official diagnosis has helped, because you get to basically say, okay, this is what this is. Now, what are the tools at my disposal, both now and as this continues to advance, that will help me navigate life, right? And make life a little bit easier and help me have more steps.
Yeah.
Like, what are all of those tools? And then you get to decide, just as every individual does, like, these are the tools I'm choosing to use at this point, and maybe in the future I'll use different tools. But like, what are the tools that are most helpful to you in this season?
Yeah.
So one of the questions that was asked by our viewer had to do with kind of just the practicality of how do you plan trips and life, and how do you just kind of navigate, because this is something that, like we said earlier, every single day impacts.
Yes.
So let's start with, because I think traveling and life, we kind of take the exact same approach.
Yeah.
Basically, we know that this is, it's not just chronic pain, but it's also the exhaustion that comes with that. You know, at the end of the day, Sherri doesn't just hurt, but can be physically drained.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, it's not like, oh, instantly better, right? It's like you're...
Great night's sleep, I'm up and ready to go. No, because I also sleep like shit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so for us, with trips, let's use a Disney trip as an example.
Yeah.
So when we first started going to Disney, and I'm actually going to take the blame for some of this because of not fully understanding what your EDS experience was. It was like, oh, all right, we're going to fly Anchorage to LAX. We're going to get off the flight at 8 a.m. We're going to rent a car. We're going to drive from LAX to Anaheim after flying all night, which, by the way, also hurts you.
Right.
Like sitting on a plane for 5 hours. You're going to have had no sleep. You're going to be in pain. But let's just go right to Disney from the airport and spend a day at the park. All day. And we get done with the end of the day, and like, you are absolutely miserable.
In tears because I'm in so much pain.
Yes.
And yeah.
And I think that was what I didn't understand, what Sherri's experience every day was like. And I think a lot of us are guilty of this, that friends of all different abilities, that we assume that their experience is similar to our experience.
Right.
And we don't take into account, like, oh, what was Sherri's experience like? So if I would have been like more understanding of what that was like for you, we would travel more like we do today. So when we travel today, we would never get done with the flight and go to a Disney park. No. You die.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, especially if we have an overnight flight, which, let's be clear, out of Alaska, they all are.
Yeah.
They're all red eyes. We use that first day as hang out and do nothing day.
Yep. If we're doing Disney parks, we would not do 2 park days back to back.
Nope.
We would do a park day and then a rest day.
Which doesn't mean that we do nothing.
No, that's right.
It just means that we don't set an alarm. We sleep as long as my body will let me. And we just have a low-key day, whether that means going to a beach or,
sitting by a pool and reading.
Sitting by a pool and reading. It's a down day.
Yep. It's not. So we don't do back-to-back high-activity days.
Right.
Because of the price that you pay. Because the reality is that if we do 2 back-to-back days, you pay the price for the following week.
Yes.
Like, at least. Maybe longer.
Yeah.
And so it's
and
just
honestly, day 2 sucks.
Miserable.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Because I started out the day in high pain.
Yeah. And so I think and here's the thing. Do I understand that that's an inconvenience? For sure.
Yep.
Like, you want to be able to do, okay, we got 5 days. We're going to go do 5 park day every day. We're going to do 5 parks. It's like, no, if we wanted to do all of the Disney parks, we're looking at like a 7 or 8 day trip.
Yeah.
And so, but here's the thing. It is worth it for Sherri to actually enjoy it and to get to experience it in a non-painful, well, not non-painful, in a less painful way.
Yeah.
And so I think that what you do is you just understand that the pace has to slow down. It's like I'm a taller guy. I have a long, like when I walk, I have a long stride.
One step of yours is 1.5 or 2 of mine.
And so
I'm taking twice as many steps as you.
Yeah, which for somebody whose knees pop out and hips pop out and joints are always in pain, it's like, that's not fair. And so like we lower the pace.
Yeah.
And I think that what you do is you just find ways to accommodate so that it can be enjoyable.
Take more frequent breaks.
Yep.
So yeah, to go back to like a Disney day, I'm thinking about our time in Disneyland Paris.
Yeah.
Where we did both parks in one day because we only had one day to do them. And, you know, they're smaller parks, and so it wasn't terribly difficult to do them both in one day. But I also remember finding a spot on Main Street covered out of the sun and sitting down on a bench, and I took off my shoes and you massaged my feet.
Yep.
And we sat for probably an hour in the middle of the day when, you know, there was a whole lot of other things going on. But I needed that time.
Oh, 100%.
And so, you know, taking those kinds of breaks throughout the day as well. We do it at the state fair too. You know, we walk around for 7 or 8 hours at the state fair, and I'm hurting by the end of it. And so even with the breaks in between, so usually, you know, we'll kind of walk around for an hour or so and then find somewhere to sit for a little bit, and then walk around for another hour and then find somewhere to sit for a little bit. Or, you know, I will find somewhere to sit and Adam will keep walking around, and because he doesn't need the breaks like I do. But, yeah, he allows me to take the breaks that I need.
Well, and I think that, so I think we've both, as we've navigated this now for, you know, I mean, together 20 years, I think we've both gotten better about speaking up. I think that you better understand that it's okay to just like exactly what you said, like, you know what, I could press myself to keep going on, but like I really shouldn't. And so I'm going to sit here for a little bit and like I can go and walk on, or I can sit and massage your feet, or we can like, I think we've both gotten good about that. I think the other thing that's important is to, if you're with somebody with EDS, to hold plans with an open hand, because the reality is there are days and there are things that we have planned, and you're having a really high pain day, or maybe like there was like a really painful dislocation, and what needs to happen is like to cancel the plans.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter like what those plans were. Like I think the goal is to care well for the person you're with more than to like keep your calendar. Right. And so like, what do? We cancel the plans.
Right.
And we stay home.
Yeah. And I've gotten better about speaking up about when I need a down day, or, you know, even if we are out and about and I'm just like, you know what, I need to be done.
Yep.
So, and some of that comes with, time and age, and, you know, trust in a relationship that I know that I can say I need to be done, and you'll be like, okay. And, you know, I think that in like a new relationship, it might be harder to want to speak up. But then it also comes, you know, with age and knowing your body. And, you know, 20 years ago, my body could do more than it can now. But I still had days where I needed downtime that I didn't allow myself.
Totally.
And so, you know, now, you know, at 43, I'm just like, nope, I need a down day, and I'm taking it. So, yeah, I think it's... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, we just made an awkward eye contact with each other. Thought it was going to turn into a flirt session.
Well, have you seen you?
Calm down. Calm down. And I think that EDS, and this is probably true with all chronic illnesses, it is you who is the one who's experiencing it, but it is like, it impacts all of your relationships, all of your, right? And so it's like, even if we're going on vacation with friends, like, to let them know that it's like, hey, just so you guys know, like, Sherri may not be able to do all of this. There might be times that you and I are going to hang back. There might be times that, and so I think it's just setting that clear expectation for everybody. Yeah. And I think that you've gotten really good at using your voice in that, which I've loved watching.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't always the case. And again, I think partly because you just like, damn it, I want to be able to do everything.
I want to be able to do everything, but I just know that there's times that I it's not even that I can't. It's that I really shouldn't. I should listen to my body and give my body the time that it needs to heal.
You know what's interesting is I've watched, so when we first got married, well, you told me about EDS before we ever like were dating. We were just friends.
We were just friends, yeah.
But really when we got married, I I wanted to know everything about EDS. And because I think that part of my job, if I'm going to be Sherri's husband, is I feel like I should be the world's foremost leading expert on Sherri, right? Like, I just think that's my job.
And all of the things that encompasses.
And all of the things, like the things that like make her light up, the things like that really like impact her for the negative, like what her experience is like, all of that. And so I did so much research. In fact, you used to joke when people would ask you about your EDS, you'd be like, ask Adam.
Ask Adam. Still, I think you probably know more about it than I do.
Because I've spent hours researching this. Because it doesn't just, I think one of the ways that I love you, and if you're somebody who's listening to this podcast and you have, whether it's a spouse or a friend or a partner who has any kind of chronic any kind of chronic illness, one of the ways that we love them is by understanding what their experience is like and making space for that and like prioritizing that. And the reality is, I think sometimes, and I think I was guilty of this before I fully understood your experience, is you can view that as like a hindrance or a negative or an inconvenience. But what I've learned from watching you is you are, I don't think I fully even understand how strong you are just to make it through what for most people is an average day. Like, what it takes for you to make it through a day is so much more than it takes me. And I just think I've seen you and other people in the chronic illness community that are just like, this is I'm gonna steal from our friend Janice. Like, I think of her daughter Amy, and it's like Titanium Amy. It's like this almost superhero, kind of like alter ego, but that really is true. I mean, you are a superhero to make it through this stuff. Because here's the thing, when I reach a 3 on the pain scale, I'm a whiny baby. I'm horrible to be around at a 3.
And that's just where I live my life.
And you live your life there, and you don't complain about that. You just like do your like normal stuff. You get through life. And I don't know. It's been really inspiring for me to, the more I learn about this and the more I understand what your daily experience is like, the more I'm just like, holy crap. Like, that's amazing to me.
Well, and I also think that when you live with chronic pain, I think, and this is one of the things that I feel like I've gotten better at, listening to my body. But when I say I need to be done, I probably needed to be done an hour ago.
Oh, interesting.
So I will push myself to the point where my body's like, no, now, no more, ma'am. And so, because I don't want to be a burden, I don't want you to have to alter your plans. If I can just push a little bit harder and get through whatever it is we're doing, then I can go home and rest. So if we're in the middle of something and I'm like, you know what, I need to be done, I really, really need to be done by then.
You needed to be done earlier.
Yes.
But you really need to be done now.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's probably the case with most people with chronic pain. I bet
you're
right. Listening to my body is only a part of it, but it's also allowing myself to succumb, I guess, and just be done, even if I don't want to be. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there anything, as you've better understood EDS over the last, over your life, is there anything, or I'm sure there's lots of things, but what's something that you really wish you would have understood or put in place earlier? Like something that maybe you could tell younger Sherri about having EDS?
I think just listening to your body and knowing your body and knowing, I think that I've never been athletic. I've never really been in like sports.
That is not true. You were on a softball team.
In third grade.
Yeah,
and what did I do?
You sat in the outfield and picked daisies.
I sure did. So I've never been athletic, which I think has actually probably been good.
True.
For me, because I think that I probably would have hurt myself a lot more had I been in sports. But, even just I think of things like, in college, I lived on the third floor of our dorm and my freshman year of college, and there's no elevators. The dorm was built with no elevators, and so I trekked up the stairs multiple times a day. And at 18, 19 years old, I had the energy to do that. But I also, looking back, I do know that I was in a lot of pain for a lot of the time. And I think that maybe I hadn't connected that that's why.
Yeah.
And so, even asking to be on the first floor, or, hey, could I live in Tucker instead of Shoop, because they have an elevator. That kind of stuff.
That's so good, Sherri.
I wonder if I had, made those kinds of allowances for myself, and walking all over campus, and, it's a small campus. It was, it wasn't very big, but still, Shoop was on one corner and most of my classes were on the opposite corner. And so it was walking all over campus. Maybe I should have had a bicycle or a scooter or, something that would have made my walking experience a little bit better. So there's that kind of stuff. I think, looking back, I wish that I had known and paid attention to.
I will say, I'm going to interrupt real quick, because it's interesting to hear you say that illustration, because I hadn't thought about this when we were talking about, like, how does this impact travel? But one of the things, I think back to our Paris trip, and there was a place that we were looking at staying, and it was beautiful. And it was far nicer than where we ended up staying. Mm-hmm. But it was like a 4th floor walk up. And the reality is, we had that conversation. It was like, that is, like, we can't do that.
I can't do that, especially after walking around Paris all day. I'm not going to be able to make it to our room.
That's the
thing.
And
I will be sleeping in the lobby.
Yeah, the reality is like, at the beginning of the day, you're probably fine. But you have to think about, you spent all day out exploring the city. Mm-hmm. What is it like when you come back?
Yeah.
Like, for you to, like, look at 4 flights of stairs is, it's not just like, it is a physical, huge pain thing.
Right. It's not lazy. It's conserving your energy, and Yep. It's putting your energy toward things that you actually want to do. I don't want to have to spend, half or quarter of my energy just getting to my room, because that means less time out doing the things I actually want to do, because I need to save energy to get back to our room.
I love that. Anything, because again, mentioned earlier, lots of people have reached out to you to kind of help them navigate this EDS world. Mm-hmm. Any words of encouragement or advice to them? Like, if somebody who's listening, maybe even like the person who asked this question, the viewer who asked this question, mm-hmm. What kind of advice or encouragement would you give somebody?
I would encourage you to get a real diagnosis, because I think that there are doors that open when you actually have that piece of paper saying, this is what you have from a qualified physician. And, there's medications that are open. There's pain management things that open that are not available if you don't actually have the diagnosis. And so, there's supplements and stuff that I'm on that help. I'm, without going through the whole list, I'm on magnesium. I take it before bed because it helps with inflammation. It helps with, my body constantly needing to move to be comfortable. If I don't take it before bed, I move constantly. Mm-hmm. I'm flip-flopping all over the bed, which I'm not sleeping. Adam's not sleeping. It's really better for everybody if I just take the magnesium. I'm on a thing called naltrexone that helps me sleep, that also helps with inflammation. I'm on turmeric, which is just over the counter, that helps with inflammation. There's things that I'm on that help my joints.
You have access to different kinds of therapies and braces and just lots of different things. Yes.
And so, the therapies and the braces and that kind of stuff are not available to you if you don't have an actual diagnosis. You can get magnesium over the counter. You can get turmeric over the counter. You can't get naltrexone. That's a prescription. But there's things doors that open if you have a real diagnosis.
That's really good. And I think that we live in a world where it's easy to Google something and to think like, oh, I think I have this. But to know that it's like, I've been diagnosed, this is what it is.
Right.
Because for you, and I watched this, that when you got your official diagnosis, like that was something changed for you. Like that was a big deal to have that diagnosis and to know like, okay, so this is officially what it is. Like now here we go.
I think it's a validity thing too. I think that it's somebody who is way smarter than I am actually saying, nope, this is what you have and this is what we can do for you. I
Helps validate the experience that like you've lived with your whole life.
Yeah.
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 And then what was it like? I know we touched on this earlier. What was it like for the first time in your life picking up a best-selling book where the main character has EDS?
Oh my gosh. It was a little bit surreal, and honestly, like, so if you have not read Fourth Wing, it's so good. But the main character, Violet, has EDS in a time that EDS is not a thing. So the author, Rebecca Yarros, who has EDS as well, she never specifies in the book that that's what Violet has. She has said it outside in like interviews and stuff that that's what she has. So, but like reading about Violet's experience, there were like paragraphs and stuff that I would read to Adam and be like, this is how I feel. This is what I go through. And, joints popping out and pain level and compartmentalizing is something that I think I've always just unconsciously done, but I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until I read Fourth Wing, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm compartmentalizing my pain. So if something happens, I put it in a box so that I can keep moving forward and keep doing the thing that I need to do. Even though I'm in excruciating pain, it's not at the forefront of mind because I put it in this box in the back of my mind. And that's something that, Violet kind of talks about. And I was just like, oh, that makes sense. And so it was surreal and very cool, I think, to read this book that really just explains the experience. Now, I don't ride dragons, unfortunately. And so there is, an element that is like, well, I don't really do that. But even, the allowances that Violet makes for herself in riding dragons and in fighting battles and that kind of stuff, like it's I don't know. It was very cool. It is very cool.
Yeah, I love that. I remember you reading me those passages and being like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like. Yeah. It's like, this is exactly she put words to my experience.
Yeah.
I loved
words
that
I didn't have before, I think.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So there you guys go. Anything else that we missed, Sherri?
I did want to ask you, we kind of touched on it, but how this affects you, because you do not have EDS, but you love somebody who does. Mm-hmm. And so, we do everything together. So we do a lot together. And so we travel and live together. And so, how does this affect you?
Well, it helps that I'm an Enneagram type 2.
I'm sure it does, yes.
the helper type.
Uh-huh.
I think that it is a constant reminder to set self aside. Because there are times that it's like, oh, we have plans, or we're doing this, we're doing that, or it's like this vacation, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if it looked like this? But it doesn't always get to look like that because there's this invisible thing that we are dealing with, right? And living with. Mm-hmm. And I think that you are better and you are more worth anything that we've ever canceled or not done, or any inconvenience, anything like that. It's kind of that it's an ability to like, I'm given the gift to like set self aside a lot because
or the burden
we get to deal with this. But I here's the thing. Going back to what I said earlier about the more I've understood EDS, the different light it has allowed me to see you in. And I think it's easy to look at it as a burden, but I think that the reality is like your experience is so different and your day is so different than mine that it's not, I just don't see it that way anymore. I don't see it as a burden anymore. And so I think that if you're somebody who's, and I said this earlier, your person or somebody in your life is dealing with this, like you have been given the gift and the opportunity, to prioritize them and their needs and their care, over what you think you want to do. And so
Yeah.
like,
And, you
shut
know,
up and do
again,
it.
right.
You know, like I really do think, I think that's part of it is like, that to approach this any other way, I think would actually be very cruel. And I'm even going to throw out the word abusive. Like for me to force you to go at the pace that I do when I don't have the same experience as you, I think is horrible, you know? And it's like, so what are my options in this? You know, the option is to like, okay, so how do you love Sherri well when she has EDS? You take this into account when we're making plans for the day and for the week, you know? And so even it's not just vacations, but, you know, if we have a busy week, ensuring that we have days between events that
Yeah.
you can rest, right? It's not just when traveling, but like planning our weekly schedule. If we're doing something on a Tuesday, that means don't do anything on a Wednesday and maybe do something else on a Thursday. Like you have to give yourself those breaks. You learn a new rhythm of life. You learn, because it would just be cruel to do anything else. Like what? How could I say I love you and willingly be making choices that put you in such physical pain and so exhausted? Like it's cruel.
Yeah. And, you know, I think again, you know, at least I know for me, and I think that is probably true for most people with chronic pain. When I speak up, it's far past the time that I should have.
Yes, and I've recognized that.
And so there's a lot of times that you know that I'm in pain before I acknowledge it.
I have, going back to what I said earlier, I think that it is my responsibility to be the world's foremost leading expert on Sherri Beth Legg. And so some of that is recognizing your physical tells when I see that you're in pain. It's your physical tells when I see you like maybe favoring something when you walk, and I can tell it's like, oh man, Sherri's like starting to like her left knee is really starting to hurt. And so you know, we've only made it to 2 of the worlds at Disney World. Guess what? We're not doing all 5 today. Because like we finished 2 and I can already see your body responding that way. Like let's do 1 or 2 more things and just call it a day and be done and go back to the hotel and sit by the pool or whatever. And so I think it's just, it's being the expert in your person so that you know when their body is saying things, even if their words aren't yet. And you've gotten much better at like saying,
Yeah.
but I still think there's a lot of times that I watch you push beyond where you probably should. And so part of, I think the responsibility is me recognizing that and like making that decision before you say anything.
Yeah. And there have been a lot of times that, like, I think, you know, again, I'm just always in pain. And so I will push until I can't anymore. And there's a lot of times that I haven't gotten to that point yet. And you're like, hey, we should wrap it up and go. And, you know, it's sometimes I don't even actually realize how much more pain I'm in until I stop.
Yep.
And then I'm just like, oh, yeah, probably should have been done an hour ago.
Yep, that's exactly
Sorry
right.
about that.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's, no pun intended, it's a pain. Having a chronic illness, having chronic pain. But I think that it's just, you know, these are just the cards that I was dealt, and I can choose to let it rule my life, or I can listen to my body and give myself the rest that I need, and be able to continue living my life the way that I want to. So,
Boom.
yeah,
There we go.
there we go.
I hope we answered all of the questions, or at least most of the questions.
Yeah.
I will say that if you have additional questions, you've been Like, you've been very generous with your time to other people.
I have nothing to hide. So
yeah, and I appreciate
any
that.
question, you can ask me.
And I also appreciate it because I feel like a lot of times people, because any diagnosis can be scary because it brings uncertainty about the future. It's like, it's degenerative. What does that mean? Am I going to be wheelchair? You know what I mean? Like, all of these kind of things.
Right.
And I think that you do a good job of, like, reminding people that this diagnosis isn't the end.
Right.
This isn't, you know what I mean?
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be the end.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate your voice in that. And so here's what we're going to do, friends, that if you have questions about EDS, you can ask them. What you do is you go to YouTube, you search LeggLife Podcast, you find this episode 151, and in the comments, just ask your questions. We'll do our best to respond.
Yep.
It will probably look like me reading them and then Sherri dictating to me typing
Probably.
out.
If you're not comfortable putting a comment in a public forum, you can also email us at legglife@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And we will also answer questions there.
I'm proud of you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, it has been very eye-opening, and I'm also really thankful. I was just thinking about the network of friends, the people like Janice, the people like Sarah, that have helped you and have helped us navigate what it looks like to live with something like this. And I think that that's actually been a huge resource because the reality is, and you guys know this, like, Facebook forums are the worst. They're the worst for everything.
Oh my God.
And so it's and so I think that, like, having those trusted voices that are helpful and healthy that you can go to, I think has been huge for you and huge for us. And so I'm just thankful for the community that has helped us navigate this as well.
Yeah.
So, friends, we love you. Thanks for listening to the EDS, the Ehlers-Danlos, however you want to say it, episode. And we will see you next week on the next LeggLife Podcast.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.